The digestive system. Here we go. I'm going to try to keep these annotated PowerPoints a little bit shorter because the movie files are so massively huge. So thank goodness for you guys. I'll cut out a lot of the irrelevant garbage I usually get lost in. Here, I normally like to take a moment to talk about the fact that you are very lucky that you don't have the digestive system of a cow. They have 4 separate stomachs. Ours is much simpler, but that's all we're going to talk about. Let's move on. Here is the digestive system. Mouth through esophagus. This is going to be the order in which the PowerPoints are going to go through topics. First, we're going to cover mouth through the esophagus. Next, we cover stomach. Next, we cover liver, gallbladder, and pancreas. Then small intestine, then large intestine. So, as we'll see coming up, the esophagus, the stomach, the small intestine, and the large intestine form the gastrointestinal tract. That's where food travels. The liver, gallbladder, and pancreas are accessory organs. No food ever goes into them. However, they produce secretions that help in the digestion of food. These diagrams, by the way, are great. They're labeled very nicely. They show a lot of the structures you need to know. So, nice summary pictures here. Now then, digestive functions. So, ingestion. You have to get the food in. You have to eat. Then digestion. You have to break down the molecules. Big chunks of food have to get broken down into microscopic molecules that you can absorb into your body. It's both mechanical and chemical. So your teeth obviously chop up the food. Then remember, your stomach and your intestines are made of smooth muscle, so they literally mash the food up. Then chemically, you have both enzymes and hormones that control digestion. Absorption, again, you have to absorb the nutrients into your body. Remember when we studied the lymphatic system, we saw that fats go in through the lacteals. They form chyle, the milky white lymph, which eventually is returned to the blood. Sugars and amino acids are absorbed directly into the blood. Remember, that all happens in the villi in the small intestine. Defecation, so whatever you can't use, you've got to get out. All right? If it builds up inside, that's very bad. That diagram on the right, by the way, is a great diagram. It has a good summary of a lot of the functions of digestion. I would spend a few minutes going over it. This is an outstanding summary slide that actually has a lot of detail. When it comes time for exam 3 and you're reviewing and studying, I think this is an outstanding study aid and review aid. Okay, stages of digestion. Mechanical digestion comes first. You actually break down big chunks of food into smaller particles. That's why you're supposed to chew, by the way. If you swallow things whole, it makes it harder for the enzymes and the acids to work, and you're more likely to have an upset stomach, okay? So teeth cut the food up, stomach and intestines mash it up. Chemical digestion. Hydrolysis reactions break macromolecules into their monomers. So look in the left-hand corner there. See, it takes a water to break down a big molecule into a smaller one. On those stupid survival shows on TV, sometimes they'll find food, but if they don't have water, they won't eat it. And that's actually right. It's very difficult to digest food without water. Enzymes are from saliva, stomach, pancreas, and intestines, all right? Well, saliva has enzymes in it. So there are lots of enzymes involved in digestion. Make a note of this. Remember this. The pancreas secretes most of your digestive enzymes by far. It is the main organ of enzyme secretion for digestion. Results. Here we have to go back to the handout I gave you on day 1, Essential Knowledge for Bio 202. It's time to go back to Bio 156. We now have to know all those things. So, polysaccharides are broken down into monosaccharides. Those are carbohydrates. The main dietary carbohydrate is starch. We get that in vegetables and in fruits. Now, plants store carbs as starch. Animals store carbs as glycogen, which we've talked about several times. You normally don't have to break down glycogen because when you cook meat, that breaks down the glycogen. So we really don't have to worry about digesting glycogen. So we take starches, those are the polysaccharides, and break them down into monosaccharides, which are the simple sugars. Glucose, fructose, and galactose. We'll talk more about those. Proteins are like big strings of beads, and every bead is an amino acid, all right? So, and then fats, there are three main kinds of fats that you have on that sheet I gave you that I want you to know about. So phospholipids make up your cell membranes and do a few other things. They have a phosphate head and fatty acid tails. Cholesterol is it stabilizes the phospholipid bilayer. It's also the source of steroid hormones. So cholesterol is an essential component of life. Then finally, triglycerides. Triglyceride means it has three fatty acid tails attached to a molecule of glycerol. Glycerol is like an alcohol form of sugar. It's easily converted into glucose. And the fatty acids also are very high energy molecules. So make sure you have those under control. You need to know those, okay? That diagram on the right, by the way, is great. It shows all the little molecules and where they are and what they're doing and so on. Fantastic diagram. Subdivisions of the digestive system. So first, the digestive tract, the gastrointestinal tract, the GI tract, is a 30-foot long tube extending from mouth to anus. That's where the food actually travels. There are also the accessory organs, the teeth, the tongue, the liver, the gallbladder, the pancreas, the salivary glands. They produce the enzymes and hormones, and they also do the chopping up and the smashing up, and, well, not the smashing up, but the enzymes, the cutting up. And look at the horse there. The horse has the most convoluted digestive system in the history of the galaxy. Thank God you're not a horse. You may know this if you know anything about horses. One of the most serious disorders for a horse is called colic. That's basically where stuff gets stuck in their gastrointestinal tract, and that is life-threatening. Horses actually die from that. So remember, next time you want a kiss from your sweetie, just say, hey, babe, how about if we create a 60-foot long tube that runs from butthole to butthole? You're lucky if you get a kiss after that. You're lucky if, in fact, they'll ever even talk to you again. Tissue layers of the GI tract. This is not in the lab slide, but it really should have been, so at least it's here. I'm going to ask you to identify these on the lab. So your GI tract has four distinct layers, and let's talk about them. The outermost layer, the adventitia or the serosa, this is the visceral peritoneum. I'll come back and remind you about that later. This is the slippery membrane on the organ itself, visceral. Then comes the muscularis externa. These are the muscles that actually smash the food up and then move it along. So there are two layers. The inner circular layer does the mashing up of food, and the outer longitudinal layer moves the food along, a process we call peristalsis. We will come back to that over and over again. You have to keep it moving. The worst thing that can happen in your GI tract is that things get stuck. That's a bowel obstruction. You have to keep it moving, and that's what the muscles are for. Next is an intermediate layer called the submucosa. That contains muscles that help in the secretion of mucus. And the mucus is actually secreted by the mucosa. What's the purpose of the mucus? To keep it sliding. You can't have a bowel obstruction. Stuff has to move through. So make it slippery with mucus and then use the muscles to move it along. So keep it sliding, keep it moving. Keep it sliding, keep it moving. That's the key to digestive function. That has to happen, otherwise you're in trouble. Here is a great picture that shows the layers. The innermost layer, that pinkish one, that's the mucosa. Then there's that kind of slate-colored layer, that's the submucosa. Then you can actually see muscle tissue there, circular and outer, longitudinal layer. And then finally, the outermost layer, the serosa or the adventitia. Now, nervous system has to control all of this. And so, remember in Bio 201, we talked about the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. Peripheral had a few subdivisions, including the somatic and the autonomic. And there was a third one called enteric, which in my 201 classes, I said we weren't going to talk about anymore in 201, but I said we would talk about them in 202, and here we are, by golly. So the enteric nervous system is sometimes called the brain of the gut. So it's the nervous system that's embedded in your intestines that controls things from moment to moment. Now, it can be overridden by the autonomic nervous system, by the central nervous system, but you don't want the ANS and the CNS to have to get involved in just routine activity, and that's what the ENS does. It controls the moment-to-moment function of your digestive system. So it functions independently of the CNS. It can be overridden, but it functions by itself. Has two nerve networks. The submucosal plexus. This is called that because it's found in the submucosa. It controls the secretion of mucus. Its job is to contract the muscularis mucosa, which causes the secretion of the mucus. Then finally, the myenteric plexus controls peristalsis, the movement, all right? Contractions of the muscularis externa. So once again, you got to keep it sliding, you got to keep it moving. The submucosal plexus secretes mucus to keep it sliding, and the myenteric plexus controls the contraction of muscles to keep it moving. All right? Keep it sliding, keep it moving. All right? Here you go. Digestion breaks down fats into what? Amino acids and sugars, glycerol and free fatty acids, monosaccharides, polysaccharides, amino acids and free fatty acids. Pause the movie, figure out the answer, and then go to the next slide. That's what you should have said, glycerol and fatty acids, okay? And assuming I don't die in this pandemic, this is where I'm going immediately after it's over. The Grand Canyon, Point Sublime. There's me with my tequila, my guitar. You can see a little snippet of the Colorado River. You can only get here via four-wheel drive. That's why there's nobody here but me. Thank goodness. Okay, kids, I'll see you again in the next Digestive System 2 PowerPoint.